In the year 1855, the biggest earthquake in New Zealand's history hit town. It was so powerful that the coast around here rose by about 2 metres. So, bam! If you'd been standing here at the beginning of the earthquake, by the end of it, you'd have been standing up here somewhere. All of which should have been very good news for Baron von Alsdorf, who was a very rich and very prescient man who was terrified of earthquakes, so he'd built himself a solid brick earthquake-proof house. But unfortunately, it collapsed on him, squashed him and killed him, making him the only person around here to die during the earthquake. Welcome to Wellington. This week I'm going international to New Zealand's capital, Wellington, starting at Lambton Quay and making my way to Marama. See what they built for him here. It's the spiritual home of a dog after my own heart. He's very sad. Very sad. Yes, that's enough, Eagle. I'll relive the Battle of Buckle Street with bikers and builders. We're not going to let them through, whatever we do. And who will win one of the all-time great desert wars? It is, of course, as they say round here, a Pavlova.
It was actually built while we were doing The Lord of the Rings.
Oh, and keep your eyes peeled for a famous director. Peter, this is absolutely splendid, isn't it? Wendy Wellington, perched at the bottom of the North Island, smack bang in the middle of the country. It's the home of New Zealand's government, and that's where I'm starting my walk. In the 1850s, they put up a wooden Parliament building on this site, but by 50 years later, the Prime Minister had decided that it wasn't posh enough. So while the MPs were away over the Christmas recess, he knocked it down and built a brick one here, which burnt down 9 years later, leaving just that front bit there. But that was the opportunity to put up a Parliament House to die for. Look at that. You've got all these elegant classical columns, and then you've got the front entrance and the mighty steps leading up to the entrance. There should have been a great big dome on the top of it, but they never got round to finishing that. Indeed, they didn't get round to building the second wing over there at all. Instead, in the 1960s, they put up this incredible edifice, the Beehive, which isn't great, is it? Excuse me. Oh. What do you think of the Beehive?
Oh, it's a polarising question.
Yeah, which is why I asked it.
People love it or hate it.
Do you love it or hate it?
I love it.
You love it? They're mad. They're totally mad. Bye. Well, it is pretty brutal architecture, isn't it? Anyway, moving on. So what do Wellington and Australia's Adelaide have in common? Answer: the Wakefields. Edward Wakefield was a felon and a visionary. After kidnapping a teenage heiress, he was sent to jail, which is where he came up with the idea of founding South Australia's capital. Anyway, he had a brother called William who did pretty much the same thing. He was involved in the kidnap plot, went to jail. When he came out, came over to New Zealand and was one of the founding fathers of Wellington. He worked for the New Zealand Company, did a number of dodgy deals with the Maori, pegged out a lot of land, and eventually there was an expose of him in the local newspaper, whose editor was Dr. Isaac Featherstone. And Wakefield went mad. He challenged Featherstone to a duel, and Featherstone fired first and missed. So now it was up to William to deliver the killer blow. He pointed his gun, lifted it in the air, fired into the air, and said, "I would never shoot a man who has 7 daughters." So even for a scallywag, he had a bit of honour, didn't he? I'm heading down to the Wellington waterfront. Hiya. We're just doing a story for some dogs. I wondered if you'd like to join us.
Yeah, would love to.
I'm not usually the sort to hang out down by the docks.
Excuse me, ladies, just round the corner there, I'm going to be telling a story.
But I found the perfect yarn for a crowd of salty old sea dogs.
Come listen to the story. Come listen. Come on then. Come on, let's wait. OK, doggy dogs, are you sitting comfortably? Good. Then I'll begin. Once upon a time, way back in the 1930s, there was a dog called Paddy who lived where you're sitting now. What happened was he had a tiny little mistress, a little girl whose dad was a sailor. So she used to come down here with Paddy and wait for her dad to come back off the boats until a really tragic thing happened. The little girl, when she was just 3.5, died. And after she died, Paddy would never go home again. Paddy just stayed here all the time. Presumably, Paddy thought that maybe his mistress would come back home. But no, of course, she never did. And Paddy just waited and waited. And eventually, people started to grow interested in him. The taxi drivers started to drive him about, and the sailors began to give him lifts in their boats, and he became more and more famous. Eventually, he was made assistant night watchman of the docks, in charge of protecting the people from smugglers and sailors and rodents. And eventually, Paddy the Wanderer died. His funeral was led by taxi drivers. Igor, see what they built for him here. There was a fountain, this doggy fountain, and every July the 17th, which is the anniversary of the day he died. Igor, come and have a look over here. Can you see that Bond store? That's now owned by the Museum of Wellington City and Sea. And every July the 17th, they renew his dog licence. That's sad, isn't it? Can you give me a little lick? It's very... Yes, it is. It's very sad. Very sad. Yes, that's enough, Igor. Thank you. Thank you, darling. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope your masters and mistresses enjoyed it too. You've got a lovely mistress, haven't you? Does she like being scratched behind the ears? Yes. Yes, she does. Lovely girl. Where am I again? Oh, yes. New Zealand. This is Cable Street here, and about 20 years ago, they decided to build a national museum called Te Papa on this site. Prior to that, there'd been a big hotel here, and of course, they were going to have to demolish it, except two local entrepreneurs were having a dinner of steak and chips one evening, and they had this brilliant idea, which was that instead of demolishing it, they would lift it up on hydraulic jacks, shove railway bogies, 96 of them, underneath it, and move it across the road. And that's what they did over the course of 2 weekends, between 5 and 10 metres an hour. And there was no serious damage. They even kept the bottles in it during the move, and they didn't break. And here it is now, 20 years later, with a golden hippopotamus on the front door. Very nice.
Of course, there's more to Wellington than white colonial history. I'm heading down Taranaki Street to a modern-day building with some not-so-modern Maori foundations.
Hello.
Kia ora, Tony.
Oh,
Welcome to Te Aropa.
thank you. What a lovely greeting. What is this place?
This is the site of a Māori pa, which you would call a village.
This down here, yeah.
These are sleeping huts. And the key to this one is you can see clearly the tree fern that was used in the construction of these huts.
That's fantastic.
Absolutely. And if you look here, there is a picture of what it looked like in 1842.
This is a fascinating drawing, that, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And what this clearly shows you is how Māori lived pre-European settlement. These are sleeping huts, and they're very low to the ground because of the weather.
So in 1839, you guys were living in this kind of settlement. And in a very few years, all this had sprung up.
Absolutely. And if we look at this picture, and this is why we've used it, you can see the palisading of the village, and we lived in them very quickly.
Wow. Liz, tell me about the archaeology.
I will, Tony. Come with me. This is a private showing.
So what have we got here? Oh, this is very nice, isn't it? Is this one hut?
Yes, it is. This is a sleeping hut.
Wow. It's so lovely, but incredibly fragile. I'm surprised that this has survived at all.
And so are we, and that's really because of the 1855 earthquake, we believe. There was a tsunami in the harbour, and what we think has happened is that the building imploded on itself, swept the gravel of the sea over top of this, and saved it.
So have you purchased this little piece of land from the owner?
Yes, we have.
How much does it cost you?
It cost us $1, one broken gun and one white shirt.
I think that was a pretty reasonable exchange, don't you?
It was a very good exchange.
The local Maori reckon there's more high-quality archaeology under this pavement, and also some on the other side of Taranaki Street, although I can't really imagine the council letting them do all that excavation, can you?
This is Wellington, and we're halfway through my Trans-Tasman trek. I've critiqued its Polly's grand designs, praised its globe-trotting pooch, and dug into its Maori past. Time to head out of town.
I'm only, what, less than a couple of kilometres from the city centre, but already its character has changed incredibly, hasn't it? And it's only when you get up this high that you realise what a small place Wellington actually is. I mean, if you were looking from this height at most towns, they'd swamp the landscape, wouldn't they? But this one looks like it's battling for survival with all the trees and wilderness.
I'm heading over the hill to a quiet little outer suburb. Officially, it's known as Miramar. Unofficially, Wellywood. Thanks largely to one hometown boy made very good.
Peter, do a lot of people who work for you live around here?
Yeah, I mean, we probably, within Miramar, even just permanently, when we're not making a movie, we've got probably 1,500 people working for the digital company, Weta Digital, because that's a full-time. And then when we're shooting a movie, there can be up towards another 1,500, 2,000 people. So most of them try to get houses around this area, yeah.
So what's here that belongs to you guys?
Well, the first thing is actually this building right here, which used to be a home for wayward girls.
Yeah.
And when we bought it, behind the building there was a concrete cell block, like prison cells.
Wow. You now have character, competence and community,
yes.
but no cells there.
No, this is the school. The school used to own the building, and then we bought the building off the school to put about 100 digital artists in. That's happening there.
That's fantastic. Now, this has got to be you, isn't it? Weta?
Yeah, now this is Marama Wonderland.
Can we peek inside and whip out again? I was going to say maybe you should put on a false beard, but that would be ridiculous.
It would be, unfortunately, yes.
This is absolutely splendid, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a little museum. There's props and collectibles on display. The productions that we've been involved with over the years.
Fantastic.
But I can take you to Park Road Post, which is just around the corner here.
Let's have a look.
OK, cool. My two favourite parts of the filmmaking process are script writing, and then I love it in post-production because you're sort of crafting the movie. There's another whole layer of invention goes on to try to make it into the best film that you can.
What about the filming? I thought that's what directors did.
That's the bit in the middle. No. So, yeah, so this is Park Road Post.
Fairly splendid architecture.
Yeah, it was actually built while we were doing The Lord of the Rings. We were kind of doing the movies and building this at the same time.
Ooh, Peter, This is absolutely splendid, isn't it?
It's a great place to come to work, I got to say.
But it does all rather beg the question, why? Why did you invest so much of your own money in post-production when presumably you could have just filmed all your movies in New Zealand and then farmed out the post and the special effects somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't have been as comfortable in a way. We really had an opportunity to build a post-production facility that was designed by filmmakers for filmmakers, somewhere that's really comfortable and a great working environment. And so that was definitely an attraction, plus the fact that we live 5 minutes away. So to get in your car and be at work in 5 minutes with not a single traffic light, no rush hour, that is just, that's nice. It's a nice way to live.
And you've managed to transform your own hometown in the process.
Yeah.
Not many people can say that.
With a huge amount of help. I mean, a lot of support.
Well, thanks ever so much, Peter.
Tony, you're very welcome.
Cheers.
Okay, then. Bye-bye.
See you again. Bye.
Just one thing, Tony, just before you go. Matt, I've got a collection of costumes and movie props that I've just collected over the years.
Yeah.
There's things that I kind of like, and I thought you might appreciate taking a little look at this one here. See if you recognise it.
Is that what I think it is?
It is.
This is Blackadder 2, isn't it?
It absolutely is.
This is Baldric.
Yep, it's my favourite series of the Blackadder series. Oh, look, there you go.
It still fits me round the head. Round here, it would not fit me anymore. But oh, well, that's a blast from the past.
Yeah.
Thank you. What a lovely surprise. Cheers.
You're very welcome. Okay, Tony.
Try it on after I've gone, but you may have the same trouble as me.
I'll have exactly the same trouble as you. Hey, take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Can you imagine how incredibly flattering that was for me to know that someone of the stature of Peter Jackson has got my costume? I know on these walks, often things happen which you're not expecting, but I certainly wasn't expecting that one.
Time to go back over the hill and back in time to Wellington, early 20th century.
In those days, manual work in New Zealand meant long hours and very low wages. So people like the miners and the wharf workers and the drivers, even the newspaper boys, had very strong unions. And in 1912, there'd been a long and bitter mining dispute, after which a new government came in that was determined to smash the power of the unions.
A year later, Wellington was the turbulent heart of a general strike that rocked New Zealand to its core.
This is Buckle Street. As you can see, there's a lot of roadworks going on right now. But in 1913, this was the epicentre of where all the bother was going on. This is Mount Cook Police Barracks. In fact, the only difference, really, is that in 1913, there's about 1,200 special constables armed with batons and guns who had been brought in to smash the strike.
These disgruntled local farmers had been given special powers by Conservative Prime Minister William Farmer Bill Massey. I wonder where his sympathies lay.
Can you hold this for me a minute, Tom? The trouble started when the wharfies stopped work just for a couple of hours to sort out some minor dispute, but the Harbour Board took that as their opportunity to take over the wharf. They brought in their own people, they bussed in a whole load of new guys, and when the wharfies came back, they couldn't get into the wharf anymore. As you can imagine, they were absolutely furious, and they decided to fight to try and take it back over. Took them 2 days, but eventually the wharf was there again, and they shut the whole harbour side down. Nothing could move in or out. Not only that, but the strike spread. It went all over the country, so the government brought in reinforcements. Excuse me, would you mind being the special constables for us? These were local farmers who were irate because they couldn't bring their food and produce down to the harbour anymore and they were losing a lot of money, OK? Guys, Guys, would you mind helping me? Could you form a picket line here? You're the wharfies, and the last thing that you want is for these special constables, the local farmers, to break through onto the wharf. So if you lock arms, that's right, you're charging, you've got loads of guns, and you're probably a bit drunk, and however much we try and resist them, there's so many of them that eventually they manage to break through. They're triumphant, crowing. Did you hear them crowing? And we, unfortunately, have lost the strike.
The strike may have been broken, but the battle was far from lost. More than 3 decades later, 2 of the ringleaders, Peter Fraser and Michael Savage, went on to become the first 2 Labour Prime Ministers.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. Thank you very much.
See you, Tony.
Bye.
See you, mate.
My walk's gone international. I'm heading into the heart of Wellington for a
new season. They're really sweet and they've got a really lovely tangy-ish taste as well. All you do is just cut them open and scoop them up with a spoon.
Oh, fantastic. Can I have this?
Yes, sure. Good source of vitamin C as well. Perfect for when you've got a cold.
That's a bloke. Mmm. Very nice, aren't they?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can I take this?
Yes, of course.
Juicy for Joe goes right to the top of my list. This is the water mobile, although everybody calls it the bucket fountain. It was designed in the 1960s. You can see that, can't you? And whenever it's windy in Wellington, which is, let's face it, most days, gets all the kids soaking wet, doesn't it? But you don't mind. It's quite interesting, really. The purists loathe it, but the tourists love it. We like it, don't we? It's really good, isn't it?
I'm going to finish my walk by treading the boards in one of Wellington's beautiful old theatres.
In the year 1926, here at the Grand Opera House, the theatrical event of the year took place. The most famous ballet dancer in the whole world, a woman so talented they said that she didn't just dance, she flew as if on wings, appeared right here. And what was the name of this exquisite piece of loveliness? Anna Pavlova, the prima ballerina at the Ballet Russe. She jeted, she pirouetted, her adoring crowd cheered her to the rafters, and then she was off again. She turned up in Australia, and once again, she jeted, she pirouetted, her adoring crowd cheered her to the rafters. But it wasn't just her dancing that inspired people. She had the most gorgeous costume, a white tutu dotted with green silk cabbage roses, and they inspired this. And afters, a dessert with the meringue and the cream representing the tutu and the kiwi fruit being the green cabbage roses. It is, of course, a pavlova, or as they say round here, a Pavlova, or something like that. But the interesting thing about this particular dessert is that it has created the most monumental row which has gone on for the best part of 80 years. And the row is about who first invented the pavlova. Was it the Australians or the New Zealanders? Was it in Perth or in Wellington? It is very creamy. Well, I can now tell you that officially the Oxford English Dictionary has pronounced that the very first Pavlova meringue was created here in New Zealand in the year 1929. So at this moment, All New Zealanders should be glowing with patriotic pride. Do you want a bit?
Wellington may be a small city, but whichever way you look at it, my full-day walk certainly takes the cake.
It's a nice piece of work, this, isn't it? It's called Solace in the Wind. Although, frankly, Wellington hasn't really lived up to its windy reputation while I've been here. It's a beautiful day today. I've grown to have quite a lot of respect for the place, though. It's very clean, very beautiful, and it's had an incredible amount of influence given what a small place it is, with the work Peter Jackson's done over the past few years, and, of course, with its world-famous dessert. See ya.
Hi, I'm Tony Robinson. If you love my show and want to see some more amazing history stories, then please hit the subscribe button, click the notification bell, and we'll let you know when there's something new to watch. Enjoy.